Hello everyone, welcome to my Batman Arkham Knight, Knightmare difficulty, no damage walkthrough. In this video, we'll be investigating North Refrigeration and being introduced to Penguin side mission alongside Nightwing. And while this video is focused on that part of the main story, a large percentage of this video is mainly going to be focusing on one side mission from the Season of Infamy DLC pack, and it is the Shadow War DLC mission, which involves Ra's al Ghul, and I hate that mission so much in the Season of Infamy pack. It is honestly my least favorite mission of the DLC. I don't know what Rocksteady was thinking with the way they were portraying Batman, with the way they portrayed the League of Assassins, with the way they tried to make Batman's moral code seem like a child defined it, and therefore that's what they went with this side mission for the Season of Infamy DLC. But it is dreadful, it is really bad, and it's very poor storytelling. And the gameplay is fine in the Shadow War DLC, and we're being introduced to the League Assassins, and we're being introduced to an enemy type that actually has an attack animation that wasn't in the main game, but was actually added with the DLC. And you'll have seen this attack animation in some of the gameplay footage of Batman Arkham Knight in the Ace Chemicals demo. But I thought originally they were going to include that particular combo that the Assassins can do on this DLC for the main story, but only now, after they've released this DLC, are they actually putting it in. But it might trip you up, but it shouldn't be too bad. But alongside this combat, there is some exploration, there's some puzzle solving. Like, the gameplay part is fine, but the story part of it, which is what I really judge these side missions on, given that the gameplay is normally pretty simple, it's horrible. Like, what I've just explained. I just think the way they represent Batman, the way he talks in one perspective, and then later on he talks in another perspective, it's like, what side are you favoring? And it's just bad writing. It's almost like the person who set up the writing for Batman didn't understand what was happening in the previous parts of the DLC mission. So that's why it's like two different personalities within Batman, and it's like, why is it doing this? And it's probably doing this to satisfy this arbitrary choice that they've given you at the end of the DLC, where you have the choice to either revive Ra's or destroy his Lazarus machine. And I just have to ask, why on earth would they give you the option of picking either reviving Ra's or destroying the Lazarus machine, when logically Batman is always going to destroy the Lazarus machine? And they're making it out like Ra's al Ghul is still human, this and that. You know, he's lived for 600 years, yet somehow he's different to Grundy. And like, Nissa even refers to Ra's al Ghul as a zombie. And remember Batman Arkham City? Remember when we dealt with a zombie? His name was Solomon Grundy. Remember at the end when Batman actually tore his heart out and killed him again? That was apparently a different kind of situation compared to what's happening with Ra's al Ghul, where apparently, if Batman lets Ra's theoretically die from the lack of Lazarus, that somehow violates his moral code, yet the only way that's ever going to violate his moral code is if his moral code is truly of a child's perspective, where it can easily be defined by a child. It's like when people define freedom. Like, this is what I mean when I say it's a one-dimensional perspective on Batman's moral code. When we look at freedom, for instance, you tell a child what is the definition of freedom, and they will probably say in a very one-dimensional way, oh, it's the ability to do whatever you want. And it's a very similar mentality here with the way they interpret Batman's moral code in this DLC. It just feels like they're not taking into account the nuances involved with Batman's moral code. They're not taking into account the fact that Ra's al Ghul is a zombie and he's actually dying. And it's just like they're not thinking of other episodes from Justice League Unlimited. They're not thinking about things from Batman the Animated Series. I mean, how could they not think of those particular episodes from those series involving Batman's moral code? And, like, remember that Justice League Unlimited episode where Ace is about to kill all those people because she has a brain aneurysm, and Batman is given a device from Amanda Waller to actually kill Ace, when Ace actually reads Batman's mind, and she knows that he's not going to kill her. Instead, what happens is Batman stays by her side the entire time because Ace is a kid, and up until the very moment where she died from that brain aneurysm, Batman stayed by her side, and apparently the people who designed this DLC with Ra's al Ghul probably watched that episode and they thought, oh, it violated Batman's moral code because they didn't understand the nuances involved with Batman's moral code. They actually thought Batman was directly responsible for Ace's death, and that's what we get in this crappy DLC. Just the way they try to introduce this choice to you, just the way they portray Batman is so insulting to his character. And the way the League Assassins react to Batman, and they say, oh, you will not let him die because of your morality. Like, they treat Batman's morality as if it's some kind of shield, as if it's some kind of way to save their leader, as if it's that feeble of a moral code, when it's clear they themselves are so simple-minded in not comprehending the way Batman's moral code actually works. And it's not like Batman already knew that Ra's was dying. He just happened to stumble upon Ra's, and they're like, oh, it's up to you, so therefore his fate is up to you, Batman. But he stumbled upon Ra's, so why are they treating it as such? As if Batman was aware of Ra's condition, and as if Batman has actually been involved in their war. It doesn't make any sense to jump to that conclusion as a fucking assassin of the League. And just to further prove my point about the way Batman's moral code is portrayed here, as if it's a bad thing that destroying the Lazarus machine will violate that code. Remember in Batman Arkham City at the end, when Batman defeats Clayface, and then Joker is just about to jump into the Lazarus pit, but then Batman takes out his sword and he destroys the machine? Joker was very close to dying, so in this case, Ra's was very close to dying, and so Batman makes the same exact decision, so therefore, he was not violating his moral code in the slightest. He was doing what he can to stop Joker from actually being all-powerful again, and to actually ensure that the future generation would not suffer under his wrath. Like, it's the same exact situation, only this time they're giving you a choice. That just feels so out of character for Batman. Obviously, destroying the Lazarus machine actually feels like it falls in line with Batman's moral code and with his character. And furthermore, if you choose to revive Ra's, Nyssa will die. So through Batman's actions, due to the fact that for some reason he's being swayed by the loyalist assassins and brought up to believe that his moral code is truly as childish as it is, he gets Nyssa killed. He gets someone who, in the game, it feels like she's supposed to be an ally, killed. So, therefore, it would definitely be a violation of Batman's moral code if he actually chose to save Ra's. And it's not like when Ra's died in Batman Arkham City, when they actually fell off a Wonder Tower. It's not like Batman was saying, oh, it's my fault, this and that. There was never any moment afterwards where he's like, I should have saved him, this and that, because there was no need to contemplate that, because the situation spoke for itself. But apparently, in a very similar situation here, where it seems like Ra's is putting himself in danger from just overusing the Lazarus pit too much, so therefore he's close to dying, it's not interpreted in the same sort of light as what it was in Batman Arkham City when they were both falling off a Wonder Tower. So who wrote this fucking DLC? Was it someone who was not affiliated with Rocksteady? Or if Rocksteady wrote this, which I'm almost certain they actually wrote this DLC, then it's clear that they don't understand Batman's character very well. They don't understand what happened in Batman Arkham City when he actually incapacitated Solomon Grundy by destroying his heart, by literally killing a zombie, and when both he and Ra's al Ghul actually fell off Wonder Tower. And I know someone's going to bring up the argument of, oh, remember that whole moment where Batman actually had to go get Ra's blood? Like, that situation is very different. I mean, Ra's was trying to get Batman to kill him, like, directly. Like, Batman actually went to that situation directly. He wasn't just stumbling upon that on accident. He actually went to Ra's directly to actually get a sample of his blood. So therefore, like, the whole act of literally killing Ra's is to be interpreted differently in that scene, and that I totally understand. But here, he just stumbles upon Ra's, and he's at the point of dying. And, like, we've seen this before with other, like, Batman movies and Batman shows, like what I've just described with Ace. But remember Batman Begins? Remember when Batman and Ra's al Ghul are on that train, and Batman says, I won't kill you, but I won't have to save you? Like, that right there was a different kind of scenario on his moral code. Like, they were both very close to dying because of the fact that the train was going to collide. And in fact, something just came in my head. You know, Ra's was on that train, and I don't see how he could have gotten off the train, because then you would have to slow down the train, get off, and then actually detonate the explosives, but that would have wasted so much time. So I think when Ra's al Ghul put himself on that train, he did it with the intention of killing himself for his cause. So I'm guessing that's probably something Batman realized, which is why he says, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you. And somebody on YouTube actually went to that scene and they left a comment saying, "This is a terrific moment in moral philosophy. Batman leaves Raish to accept the consequences of his own malevolence. There is no moral obligation to save the evil from themselves." And in fact, thinking back to Batman Arkham City, remember when Batman was actually leaving Wonder City after he confronted Raish? He told Raish to shut his pit down and that he'd be back to face the consequences. And it seems like Raish didn't listen to Batman, so therefore Batman is staying true to his word and that he is leaving Raish to his fate. Because he warned him that this would happen, but Raish didn't listen. But then, out of nowhere, they decide to present this choice, this arbitrary choice that is just there because they just wanted to put in some kind of player choice for this mission for no reason, without fully considering the consequences it will have on Batman's character that's been established throughout the Arkham games, and the consequences it would have on the writing. Like, I would be fine with this side mission if there wasn't a choice at the end, and when Batman isn't flip-flopping between perspectives just because the writers forgot about what they said in the earlier parts of this mission. Like, Batman expresses one perspective when he's talking to that loyalist assassin when he meets Raish, and then he expresses another perspective to Nyssa that is completely contradictory to what he just said to the loyalist assassin. So why he expressed that, it's only due to one thing, and it is terrible writing. And let me just cite another example of Batman's moral code being put into question. Remember Superman Batman Apocalypse? And the part where Superman is battling a brainwashed Supergirl? Remember that scene where Batman plays a gambit against Darkseid, and he says that he's unlocked the armory and actually armed the Hellspores, and he said that one Hellspore will turn a planet into a fire pit. What will happen to Apocalypse when 500 of them go up simultaneously? Like, he says he's armed them, so it means that he was perfectly willing to kill Darkseid in that moment because the situation was very different in the sense that he was dealing with someone who was practically a warlord, someone who practically had characteristics that were not indicative of that of a normal human being. He was an alien life form. And in a sense, Raish could easily be considered as such because he's been living for 600 years using Lazarus, and his capabilities are so different to the normal human being that he's really not something to consider when it comes to Batman's moral code. Like, I'm citing all of these examples that the writers should have been able to look at and then actually put together properly in this Shadow War arc. But no, they didn't consider any of that when designing this, and they decided to give you a choice for no reason, and it doesn't even serve a gameplay purpose. It's not like making one choice will actually have a major impact on the story. No, it does absolutely nothing. And like I said before, this whole entire side mission feels so disconnected to the main story that there's no sort of consequence to doing it. And you're not learning anything about the main story when doing this. So what is the whole point of this? It's not like they're even bringing in characters from the militia or actually bringing in Scarecrow or the Arkham Knight into this mix. And the only side mission where they actually do this in the Season of Infamy DLC is Mr. Freeze's side mission. And that side mission I feel is my favorite of the Season of Infamy DLC, but this one is my least favorite. And I've left in these moments right here. But there's one thing I can definitely appreciate about Batman in this scene. It's when you see how he didn't even react when the assassins tried to draw their swords on him. It shows how much he's notorious in the League's eyes, and I'm glad they left in those aspects. But again, this would have worked if the mission format didn't favor a really stupid choice at the end. But here is this loyalist assassin. She's saying that war is coming. Traitors to the League conspire to stop the glorious resurrection of Ra's al Ghul. And then she says she'd rather see Gotham burn before letting the rebels hurt their master. And then he says this, "Then let him die. I want you gone by morning." He's saying that because he knows he's not directly a part of this conflict. He's an outsider in this case, pretty much. Like, the League of Assassins and the rebels make up this circle of evil, basically. And Batman's an outsider in this case, but they're acting like he's part of that circle here. Like, he's not a part of this evil that has been set up by the League of Assassins. He's someone that has come from outside of that circle, and because he happened to stumble upon them. But then she's acting like she's a part of that. Like, it's just stupid. And then here he says, "Help me for Talia," yet Nyssa says, "Oh, Raish can't actually remember who Talia is." So if Nyssa is saying that Raish doesn't know who Talia is, why exactly does Raish say Talia's name here? And why does he talk about Talia as if she truly mattered to him? Like, we've seen in Arkham City before that clearly Talia doesn't matter to Raish at all. Like, she matters more to Batman because originally they were in love, and we've heard this story before in the comics. But why is Raish trying to appeal to Batman like that by using his supposed love for Talia? It doesn't make sense, and Batman should know this, but he just leaves in complete silence without saying anything else, and it's almost like that silence indicates that he's letting Raish's words get to his head. He's letting the loyalist words get to his head when it actually shouldn't, but it's only getting to him because of bad writing. And I'm going to say it again, it is due to bad writing. That's what this entire DLC is, bad writing. And it's a complete mockery of Batman's moral code. It's almost like the people who wrote this DLC just wanted to create this DLC as a way to mock Batman's moral code, to mock the fans who truly understand how his moral code works. It's almost like in some ways they have this internal hatred towards Batman, and they wanted to ruin the writing of this DLC and just completely discredit the way Batman was portrayed in the previous games just to satisfy that inner desire. And it's really insulting. And I at least have the right to say that because I at least understand Batman's character a lot more. I mean, Batman is still a mystery to me. I mean, the kind of decisions that he makes are the kind of decisions that, other people wouldn't do. Which also is something I need to talk about as well. Like, the whole idea of a player choice. Like, remember the Batman Telltale series? That whole cinematic adventure where you picked certain dialogue choices for Batman, you picked certain actions that he would do. I hate doing that to Batman. I hate it when the developer tries to make the player decide what he should do. Because oftentimes the choices that are given to you are probably choices that Batman wouldn't do. Like, Batman is the kind of hero/vigilante who will do the most unexpected of choices, who actually finds, like, a better solution to a puzzle. Like, think of it this way, like, think of the Batman Arkham Origins final Bane fight when you're trying to stop Bane's heart. Like, Batman himself would have actually thought of stopping Bane's heart, but when a developer decides to give you the choice to decide what to do, it would have been either a choice of, killing Bane or letting Joker die. Never a third option as well. Like, Batman's always that third option kind of character, and this was established in this show called The Batman, when he was dealing with a robot that understood his identity, and this robot presented two choices, but Batman found a third way to actually handle the situation while still saving Alfred and preventing his identity from being revealed to the world. And I just feel like the way they present this choice, it's like they're giving the player's biased perspective a chance to make itself known in the game. Like, why would they introduce a player's biased perspective into Batman's moral code rather than letting Batman showcase to the player how he would handle it? Batman should know, not the player. Like, it feels like a lot of this is just there to just arbitrarily give the player choice. Like, the choice is there because the choice is there. And it's not there to add some depth to the story, and it's not there to actually make you question the idea of Batman's moral dilemma in this case. And even if it is for that purpose, this is a badly written situation. This is such a childish way of actually presenting this kind of moral dilemma. And it makes a mockery of Batman. It makes a mockery of the League. Although in the latter case, maybe that is the case. Because the League is oftentimes presented as this very one-dimensional organization that tries to kill everyone because they think that is actually how they will safeguard humanity. When in actuality, it's just there to safeguard this one man's rule. So, yeah, this one-dimensional perspective in all the followers and in Ra's al Ghul is definitely the case, so I'm glad they captured that, but in a way that just seems very comical. And I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm actually not, because the prior DLCs before the Season of Infamy DLC were horrible. They were just one-off DLCs that didn't contribute in any way to the story. They just reused scenarios from Batman Arkham City, and Catwoman's Revenge was the greatest example of Rocksteady's complete lack of care displayed in actually designing a fucking DLC. And it's the same case here. There is a lack of care displayed with this writing technique that they decided to favor with this DLC. And look, he says, I'm no killer. And he says that as if he is going to be responsible for Raish's death, yet he just stumbled upon Raish. And now it's suddenly up to him to actually decide the fate of Raish. And it's like he's letting the loyalist assassin's words get to his head. He's letting Raish's words get to his head right now. Why? Why is this the case? And then when Nissa is talking about the fact that Raish has died many times and has been revived by the Lazarus Pit, I mean, Solomon Grundy went through the exact same thing as well. He's a zombie. The reason why Solomon Grundy has those abilities is because Ra's al Ghul experimented on him to perfect the Lazarus chemical. And Ra's al Ghul and Solomon Grundy are both zombies, yet in Batman Arkham City, we literally see him rip out the heart of Solomon Grundy in order to kill him, because at that point, given the fact that he's a zombie, the whole idea of incapacitating someone is indistinguishable from the whole idea of killing them because they're zombies. But at least in that case, Solomon Grundy directly attacked Batman. He was alive and well. There was no argument to be made about him dying from just something that was not even Batman's fault. So Batman had torn out his heart in order to incapacitate him. And the same cannot be said for Ra's al Ghul in this case. Like, you can't even bring up the whole idea of Batman's moral code in this case. Like, he's a zombie, and he's dying from a condition that is not even Batman's fault, and Batman even warned him to shut down his pit, but Ra's didn't listen to him. So Ra's is bearing the consequences of his own actions that have nothing to do with Batman. But then here, just out of nowhere, without any sort of development, it's like Batman is saying that it is his fault, when he's even, like, thinking of keeping the Loyalist's words in his mind. Oh, and also, in this scene, he admits that Nyssa is trustable. Like, he admits that he does trust Nyssa right here. So, why would he ever try to go against Nyssa when he just said right here that he does trust her and that she was the most reasonable member of the family? It's, like, again, there's more dialogue in this scene that is so conflicting, and it just leads to a lot more confusion. And to further muddy this situation just unnecessarily, we then have this conversation between Batman and Alfred's expressing a completely different perspective, and Batman is just saying, oh, I swore I never killed. And again, it's just a completely, like, flip-flop perspective compared to how he was when he was talking with the Loyalist. And why is he saying, I swore I would never kill, when it's not even him that's killing Ra's? Ra's brought this upon himself. Batman had nothing to do with this. He just stumbled upon this situation, compared to how it was with Solomon Grundy, where he tore out Grundy's heart in order to kill him, and it was different in that case because Grundy was a zombie, and the whole idea of incapacitating a zombie is indistinguishable from the whole idea of killing them. But no, Batman is just suddenly like, no, the Loyalist is right. My moral code is indeed defined by a child. It is indeed that one-dimensional. And you want to know something else? Apparently, Batman has always had some kind of respect for Ra's. I mean, he does admit that Ra's is evil, but in the way he has this sort of authority and this kind of conviction, Batman respects him for that. So, in an almost warrior-like sense, since that seems to be a defining characteristic of both Batman and Ra's, since they understand the art of war very well, wouldn't it be very inhumane to let somebody live in suffering and just let them, like, choke on their last breath, rather than actually letting them die peacefully? Like, that, again, is probably something that is applied to Batman's moral code, but that's in the warrior sense, but we're not talking about the warrior sense, because oftentimes Batman's moral code is considered from, you know, like, the normal modern perspective rather than the warrior perspective. So what is the perspective warped in this case? I mean, then again, if it is warped, then Batman would have actually let him die peacefully, rather than letting him continue to suffer even more. And I guess I just answered my own question about this whole idea of the choice. Is this choice relevant or not? It's not relevant. Because the whole idea of reviving Ra's, it just feels so against the whole idea of what Batman is. And to say fuck you the Ra's and fuck you the Rocksteady, I'm going to destroy the Lazarus machine right here. And see, you weren't a good man, Ra's, but you had conviction. So clearly as a warrior, there is some respect between the two. But in terms of morality, Batman and Ra's are villains. So in the warrior sense, it's good that Batman actually decided to let Ra's die peacefully, even though it's never even represented in the gameplay, because all that happens is that Batman takes Ra's back to GCPD, and Ra's just lays there on a gurney in his cell, just ready to let death take his life, rather than having Batman do it himself, which I'm perfectly okay with Batman, and I feel like it's a better choice compared to the other one. And again, if you let Ra's live, Nyssa will die, and the League will continue to kill more innocent people. Like, thinking of the future, it's better to not revive Ra's, because Ra's has a habit of killing innocent people, and Nyssa promised Batman that she would not let the League kill more innocent people, and Batman even said that Nyssa is the more reasonable member of the family, and that he trusts her. But then you're just going to present the choice for no reason, despite everything you've just laid out for us already. So, like, they've laid out all this information as if this was originally going to be a non-choice side mission, interspersed with stuff that is related to a choice for no reason. So it's like there's a flip-flopping of mentalities. It's like they couldn't decide on what to do, and the quality really reflects itself in this presentation of this side mission, and it's so dreadful. But that is the end of this abysmal side mission, the worst side mission ever in the Season of Infamy DLC. And we are going to take Ra's back to GCPD, but not before Batman gives Nyssa a stern warning Don't make me regret this, or you will, which I feel is the perfect way to establish that even though Batman sided with Nissa in this case, he'll make her regret this if she goes back on her word, which sets up the fact that they might have averted war, but that doesn't mean that Batman fully trusts her and that he will be prepared for when she decides to start another war, just in case she decides to go back on her word of not killing innocent people. And that just feels like a better interpretation of Batman's character than with the other choice. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say for this DLC. I'm going to just stop right there because I've had enough of this really shitty piece of content. But now that we've done that side mission, we're just going to go on to do other things. And I say other things as if we're doing multiple things, but in actuality, it's just one side mission before we actually get on to the main story quest with Nightwing. But right here, these vehicles, I'm trying to ram into them in battle mode, but it doesn't class as damage. It only classes as damage if you're in chase mode, not battle mode, which is very rigid design, and it's clear that the developers had no flexibility in thought or even comprehended a possible scenario where you'd be able to actually destroy these vehicles in battle mode. So yeah, that lack of imagination is just there because they wanted to make this arbitrarily difficult for the sake of being difficult rather than actually being well designed. And with the way this APC side mission is designed, I'm forced to take it nice and slowly, just eliminating all of the escorts, because since they're behind the lead vehicle, they're going to be moving at their slowest speed. And even when I fire my immobilizer, it doesn't make them go any slower, they will still go at the same speed. I've even looked on forums, and there are people saying that they hate the APC side mission as well, with how the cars are just a lot faster than the Batmobile, with how long it takes to do, with how awkward the driving can be. I'm definitely not alone in that department, and I'm really glad to hear that. But given how the APC chases are just very slow and steady processes, and there's really no strategy that I can give you, I'm just going to go on different tangents. And I'm going to talk about Seraphim 17. So, even though I mentioned in my Black Ops Cold War walkthrough that I wouldn't be watching Seraphim 17 anymore, given that the new person he's become is just a bare-bones version of the colorful person he was previously, I still occasionally go back to his videos, like his older videos when he was still colorful, and, you know, there are some new videos that he has uploaded that are actually pretty good. You know, I watched his Condemned walkthrough. Like, he did a full game walkthrough of Condemned showing only the combat sequences, and Condemned looks like a lot of fun. And I really do consider its ideas to be very unique and almost Resident Evil-esque in their interpretation and their uniqueness. Like, Condemned almost looks like Resident Evil 7 to me. I mean, the melee combat in Resident Evil 7, I feel, has a little bit more complexity to it, and also with the way the blocking works, I do feel like it's a little too binary, so it's not that intriguing of a system. And like the way the melee works with the enemies, it's very similar to Evil Within 1, where you hit them with a melee attack, they'll flinch, and then other times they'll counterattack. So it's a very similar process, only Condemned as blocking to it. But, you know, like the mechanics are kind of in your face with the tutorials, whereas in Resident Evil 7's case, with crouching, like they never made crouching a tutorial. Like, true Resident Evil players would be able to discover that crouching was an actual mechanic for dodging in the actual campaign, and it was only until the end of Zoe DLC where they acknowledged crouching as being a valid way to dodge enemy attacks. And, you know, like, Resident Evil 7 was the very first game that I played where passive crouching could actually be used as a way to dodge. And I do like the way the enemies are handled in the combat when it comes to the melee combat. And, you know, I do love the way the guns feel in Resident Evil 7. I love the enemy type so much. And, you know, I love the environments, I love the atmosphere, I love the tone of Resident Evil 7. Like, that game is a masterpiece. It is definitely a masterpiece. And sadly, I can't really say the same for Condemned, because Condemned is developed with PC in mind, so therefore a lot of the clunkiness that you experience on PC, some of the outdated animations are definitely there with Condemned. So that's definitely what brings it down in quality, and also there were some FOV issues causing enemies to gain a lot of phantom range, which is what I've noticed. And you can only play Condemned 2 on PS3, whereas Condemned 1 is only exclusive to PC and Microsoft Windows, I believe, which really sucks. And like I said, the combat seems a little basic, while at the same time presenting itself as being very complex and fun. I mean, presentation-wise, it's complex, but in actual mechanics, it's probably not as complex as I'm thinking. Although, you know, people have said that the AI in Condemned is very advanced, and I do agree with that. You know, the AI doesn't mindlessly rush; they do actually hide around corners, and that's pretty cool. But maybe when I play Condemned, if I ever do play Condemned on PC, and maybe if I watch some more gameplay, it'll look a lot better to me. And maybe it will feel as interesting as Resident Evil 7, but nothing will ever change my thoughts on Resident Evil 7 being the best first-person game out there. Even if Condemned has some really cool mechanics that Resident Evil 7 has, like the ability for enemies to hit each other, and it makes certain combat sequences very balanced when enemies are placed in some very small corridors, but it doesn't matter because they hit each other. And if you skillfully use that to your advantage, you can deal with those encounters easily. And then you can pick up weapons in the environment, you can pick up the enemy weapons, you can use guns as melee weapons. That game has a lot of creativity to it, and I definitely think Condemned is one of the best survival horror games ever made, even if it doesn't feel as interesting as Resident Evil 7, in my opinion. But I haven't really played it, and I can't play it because it's on PC. But going back to what I was saying, Servum17 delivered a pretty good walkthrough of Condemned, and I did like his commentary as well. But relating this to Batman Arkham Knight, Servum17 mentioned that he likes the side characters. He prefers playing as the side characters compared to Batman, and I just have to ask why. And he says that the side characters are faster than Batman, but based on my experience and the flashy animations and the amount of like cartwheels and flips and slow animations that the side characters do, and the lack of gadgets at their disposal and the lack of abilities that Arkham Knight introduces, and the side characters don't have any of those abilities aside from the critical beatdown system, the side characters feel so inferior to Batman. And I just have to ask, why would they make the side characters so inferior to Batman? Why can't they be equally as fun to play as Batman? And Servum17 doesn't feel the same way, apparently. He says the side characters are better than Batman, which really boggles the mind, based on what I've shown with the gameplay. Like, Batman has all these capabilities, all these diverse options at his disposal for combat and predator encounters that the characters just don't have. And then when you're placing certain side characters in really shitty combat encounters, like in Catwoman's Revenge, when she has to deal with those robots on an electrified floor and she doesn't deal as much damage as Batman, and their gadgets are completely useless against the robots, it really makes you hate the side characters even more, because they're not befitting for a diverse arrangement of combat scenarios, whereas Batman is. So I just find it very confusing how 2015 Servum17 can say that the side characters in the Batman Arkham games are a lot better than Batman, when in actuality and in their functionality and in their practicality and in their lack of combat options and predator options at their disposal, they feel very inferior to Batman. And they just aren't very fun to play as. And, you know, that's why when I'm in some kind of combat encounter where I'm with an AI partner, you always see me playing as Batman and not that person, because I hate playing as them. And I've already showcased some of the more annoying moments with the side characters in my annoying/dumb/weird moments series for the Batman Arkham series. And I'm still going to showcase more, because Catwoman's Revenge is definitely getting a spot on that list, because I hate that DLC. It's the worst DLC I've ever played for a game by far. And I'm sure you might be thinking, what about the Ghost Survivors DLC from Resident Evil 2 Remake? The Ghost Survivors DLC from Resident Evil 2 Remake was not about the developers favoring broken designs. It was just a complete lack of effort displayed on the developers' part, and they just reused assets from Fort Survivor to just create a reskin of Fort Survivor. And then they tried to mimic the Knightmare DLC from Resident Evil 7, only without any sort of depth to it whatsoever. And the only enemies you were fighting were just these fake new enemies that were just reskins of zombies with certain fundamental parameters changed. Like, that DLC is more about laziness, but within a different realm entirely. Whereas with Catwoman's Revenge, laziness is definitely the case, but it's intersposed with lack of care, broken designs, developers not comprehending their own designs. The favoring of combat encounters that just further reinforces the developer's complete lack of comprehension of their own designs, and the combat just completely falls apart. You're forced to limit yourself in combat in order for the sequence to go a little bit more smoothly, and it's just, you have to hope and pray that the game doesn't fuck you over, and Catwoman, for whatever reason, doesn't deal a lot of damage to the robots. And the funny thing is, in the first and second phase of that combat encounter, the Riddler robots go down pretty quickly, but then they decide to arbitrarily increase their health in the final phase when the electric floor becomes a factor to consider. Why on earth would they do that? Why would they arbitrarily increase the Riddler robots' health for no reason? They're still the same robots you've been encountering in the first and second phase, but now they're just more resilient to damage, because critical strikes don't do a lot of damage to them. And you need those kind of advantages for a phase that is all about timing. You gotta be fast. But when you have to limit yourself in combat, and I mean it, you do have to limit yourself in combat, because if you try to do takedown animations, if you try to be reliant upon Catwoman's gadgets, you are going to put yourself on top of the electrified floor because you're at the mercy of whatever animation Catwoman chooses to do because she gains so much forward momentum when she's trying to do takedown animations or when she's trying to do her normal melee attacks. And then you're at the risk of prioritizing the wrong guy when he decides to step on the electric paneling. Like, what the fuck were they doing? And the amount of problems that DLC has is more problems than Resident Evil 2 Remake's Ghost Survivors DLC. And that's the main distinction you have to make between Catwoman's Revenge and the Ghost Survivors DLC from Resident Evil 2 Remake. That's exactly what I mean, and I hope you understand this, and I'll definitely be doing a walkthrough of Catwoman's Revenge, and maybe alongside this I'll do a live playthrough. I mean, I have saved footage live of me doing that DLC for Catwoman's Revenge, and oh my god, right there, did you see that? The game froze, and I thought the game had crashed, and I was like, no! Yeah, that was pretty bad. And the funny thing is, before I managed to get started on the recording, the game had crashed for no reason. So that's why I was very worried when the game froze just then, because I thought it was going to crash again. I don't know what it is with Batman Arkham Knight on PS5, but it has a lot of issues with optimization where the game just crashes for no reason. And I noticed this a lot more with the DLCs, but with the main game, I have had a couple of crashes. And I don't know if it's PS5 exclusive or if this also happens on console, but the fact that it hasn't been fixed yet is just concerning. And I feel like with the amount of crashes that I've experienced for Batman Arkham Knight, I have to be very cautious when recording this game, because if this game is going to crash whenever it wants to, and I'm recording long segments of gameplay, if the game decides to crash when I'm recording those long segments of gameplay, I'll lose out on that footage entirely. It will not save to the capture gallery, and I will not be able to replay the level, and I'll have to replay the entire game again to get back to that point, which would really suck. But here it is. I'm just going to take out these militia and just destroy the turrets, and that will be the end of this video. So stay tuned for the future parts. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.